Okay, so we have a couple of questions here. So the first one, how can the truth of the path be in the category of complete abandonment when the path of accumulation and path of the preparation are not in complete abandonment? Or does the truth of the path only to refer to path of seeing and beyond? Surely the first three truths are conventional truths and only the truth of cessation is the ultimate truth. Okay, so, there's more definitions here. So the tsenyin the lamdenla, right? Lamdenla tsenyin namjangi chok, right? Yina the two did it. The namjangi tag nangla kandire, kain sena the soglam tam cholam ni namjangi chok mare, right? So the does the truth of us and the truth of the past of seeing. So the tonglam, gonglam, milablam, chikpore, or the soglam jolam, the lamgi temba nanglam arebe. Mena dini this temba sumba, the tondam demba any god dem chikbo the sorry, tondam demba any the sumba shemba kunzab demba reb. The two did how was it?
람딜라 토남 이제 고남 밀로랑 남마여와 해 람딜이 토남단 조람 람딜 마레스 통부터.
Okay. So yeah, that's correct. The first two, the path of accumulation preparation, are not included in the truth of the path. It's only the last three: seeing, meditation, and no more learning.
너디 제라 통로 데 캐주에 되잖아 리그 제라 안에 가르스나 코 디네 예와디 던데 용그레스 고든 콘도덴 바테 년단다 오마라주로레이나 고든 콘도덴 바레 전한데 마레스
그래도 람덴
고든
Oh, okay.
람덴게 되게 제와 제가 용그레스단다 신이 용구로와 신이나가 세부차게
Okay. So we'll explain it a little bit more when we actually get to the definition of the truth of the path. But in the Madhyamika Svatantrika, the truth of cessation is conventional truth, not ultimate truth. Yeah, but in the Madhyamika perspective, Madhyamika Prasangika, then it becomes ultimate truth. Okay, so earth, fire, water, wind, smell, taste, touch, and sight. I was wondering why hearing was not included. So the genangla amchanyin yomare ri karichini yomare.
Yomara da de 다세 디 사마야고다나 수니식 나나 요미시페 유르 메베서 저디
Okay.
사마야고다나 디 대간도기 다세 디 니식 유에 내가 미시지게 디기 다기 윤지어라 아니 나시 년자세로 니식 다미시 아니 페 유지 프라 유프라 차셔다나 다세지 페지 메베서 저디라
Okay.
사마야고 안데서나 Wundi da hawa jebura da yoro chi da nang da sa yoro
Right.
ani da nang da 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 mo da di am shi chi da da amjo ni shi gi shewa amjo na shi ni je de ma do na na pe tu du me we so ja.
Okay. So
ne yu tamo de zena la pe na chu yoro chu du na la da de me wa pe na di chana de ha go re 자주 여러 자주 자주 되면은 암저 거예요 말.
Oh, okay.
그래 다음에 어딘 거네. 추두나가 다음에 어딘 거.
Right. So saying the sound's not included because the basis for sound is not actually an object, right? So when you hear, there's no basis for that object, right? There's no base. So this means that it can't actually said to have an external object. An internal sound, okay, then that's different. You can find that big. But external sound doesn't have its own separate objects, right? And this can be illustrated by basically the fact that in the water, you can't hear. Like underwater, you can't hear any sounds. Like if somebody's speaking, you won't be able to hear it. So there's no actual object basis for the sound. That's why it's not included. Okay.
아니 가시게 둑다가 남과 둑다 가시게 다시 뒤지 치료를 줘요. 가시게 수수먼저 수수 심지기 시주지가 심지기 다시야 돼. 항상 미당 주도다 되게 비디오 메시 유는 매어디 시고 되려 남과 중나라 디베트 망고 체제.
Okay. So this point actually is a bit contentious, right? Because amongst the different tenant systems and the different beliefs, there's different views. Like some say there's no external object for sound, and some say there is an external basis for sound. So within the different Buddhist views, it's related to differently. So some tenants say yes, some say no, and they debate a lot about it. So, but this is the reason it's not included in this list.
일단 먼저 수수성의 우단이나 그냥 애기 계주시에디 그러면서 암절로 구두미징에 다들 죽고요 말하는데. 다양한 현장들에 다들 얘네 tembo다 안기 당고데 전화서 암절 그거 말 전화서 암절 해야 돼 다기 계진이와 숨바시와 된대로 걸어오여라.
Right.
안디 바로게 다들 니시지요 말했으냐 저 리버로.
So when you think about it, and the way sound exists and the way sound travels, then Geshe says like when he speaks, you don't immediately hear the sound. The sound takes a few moments to actually travel, right? So it's not like the moment he speaks you hear it. It has to take time to reach to you. So you have to really think about how sound exists. Like from a scientific point of view, it's just a vibration of air that creates the sound, or atoms within the air. Yeah, they talk about this a lot in the Abhidharma. So if you want to read that, I'm sure there's a lot. Right.
자나 탕게라데 들어가도 당생나마 들어 빈바 예와도 아니나 들어
Tonight this.
말다 루잉이 로마체.
Oh, okay.
루잉이 들어.
Tunrub.
이제 루잉이로 다도 슬래셔는 주고. 루잉이로.
Yeah.
루잉이게 만저게 다 이제 직den지 컴 주당게 다 되게 감수미 감시거라.
Right.
이 리무시티도 리무시티 리무간에 지 라단지 티도 이 리무디 소다데 다 감숨사 굴라들 여러 감숨제도 감수가 숨이가 안데라 삼제 라야 수건들이 주준에 여러 아니 제가나 숨이 시세들 여러 아디 얘들이 무티도 루무디 소다디 인상게 미식푼다라고 하시지. 이런 방법이.
No?
그래서 미설 당그러야.
Right.
다외나는 당그러. 다외나는 모델 산데스 당그러. 되게 루무지고지냐.
Oh, so it looks like a missile.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
뒤로 뒤나는 진짜.
Right.
세상 대 루무디 전에 싫어도잖아. 야나라 제시도 서 뭐지 탕게라고 이제 대제 인고만 못 해요. 이제 너무 좀 내대 링세에 이제 못 해도.
Right.
아니야네 주문 인고지 돼요. 주문디 주문디 대제 프랑스 점령한 거 무슨 친구지나는 요새. 아니 세력이 다들 밀사기 디자인이 루베인이 들어든 거 제원하는 뒤살. 디자인이. 맞아 양 주세요. 배 접서 양생 서프레소
Okay.
서프레소 하는 거 하고.
Okay, so I can't remember the Sanskrit name, sorry, but he was an Indian Pandita. He drew an image of the realms of samsara, right? He drew a painting. This is many years ago. Vasubandhu? Sorry. Vasubandhu. That's right. So Vasubandhu, he drew this picture of the different realms of samsara. So you have the Dokam Domika. So it starts with right. So it starts with all the realms of the desire realms, so the lower realms, then the human realms, then the desire god realms. Then does the form.
Form realm the 17 euro to 2 euro.
17 form realms, right?
Formless 4 euro.
And 4 formless realms. Right. Right. So he drew this, like all of these, I guess they're stacked on top of each other. I guess it says it kind of turned out to look like a missile, right? Like modern scientists, they shoot these rockets up into space and these missiles, and that's what the painting actually looks like. So it was in a long time in India, right? And now it exists in, he thinks it's in a museum in France. Museum? Okay, don't know that. Okay, can't remember the name of the museum. But he was quite surprised when he saw this painting that it looks like a missile, basically. So we have to like shoot our minds up like a missile. It's a bit strange. I think so. Any other questions or just these two? Did I miss anything? No, that's it. You've all got this now? I should have put them out.
Oh, yeah.
There's some more at the back if you go, and he's missed, I think it's on the chair there.
Oh, dear.
So there's a couple. Well, this kind of thing. Does anybody not have? I'll put some on the chair. Okay, so there's some more here. Oh yeah.
방고디 동네디 외친이. 아디 동네디 외친이들아 군인 유문식이 되면 관심인데 군인 유문쇼 땅을 최탐제 뒤에 대전이는 그거 군인 유문쇼 대전직 남자쇼리 대전직 대전이는 뒤로가. 아 제시디 군인 유문쇼리 대바다 군인 유문쇼리 저희 뭐 관심라. 아니 제주 제딩도 미다 동에 또 다음에 아니 다 뒤에 제대로 된대지가 제시 된대지 된다 제주 된대 시드 상도는 어디 되나 동에 된 봤어. 거기 여러스티 대셔랑 자살하다.
Okay, so now we're looking at these definitions, and there's quite a lot of words in them, right? But it's actually relatively simple how they work. So we've got here, for the truth of cessation, it says here, within the aspect of the truth of complete purity, or I guess complete abandonment is a more literal translation, and being thoroughly distinguished and clarified by the 4, cessation, peace, excellence, and emergence, definite emergence or renunciation. So basically the definition is broken down into 2 divisions. So we have the division of, or the aspect of pervasive affliction, and then we have the aspect of complete abandonment or complete purity. So basically the definition is broken down into 2 divisions. So we have the division of, or the aspect of pervasive affliction, and then we have the aspect of complete abandonment or complete purity. So So those are the two divisions. So the first two truths are in one division, and the second two are in another division. And then it's qualified by which aspects they have. So the truth of suffering is the aspects of impermanence, suffering, emptiness, and selflessness, right? So it's in the aspect of pervasive affliction, and has the four characteristics, or is distinguished by the four characteristics of impermanence, suffering, emptiness, and selflessness. Right. Okay. Okay, so beings. Okay. So when we divide this truth of suffering, it can be divided into two parts, right? So it's actually said to, like, the literal translation is the vessel and its contents. But this basically means the world and its inhabitants. So this basically means we are in the truth of suffering, right? So I'm in the truth of suffering, and why is that? Well, because I fit the definition, right? I'm in the aspect of pervasive affliction, and I have the four aspects. I'm produced from delusion. I'm impermanent. I'm in the nature of suffering, and I am empty of a truly existent self. So that's the essence. So I fit those four attributes. So okay. So all samsaric beings, all beings who cycle in samsara, are part of this truth of suffering. Okay. Okay, so then we get to the vessel, which is said to be the world. So this is basically like a house, or New Zealand, a country, or the world itself, right? This is all said to be in the nature of suffering. Now, why is that? Because within it, wherever you go, there's no perfect place where you can have happiness all the time. Wherever we go, people, they say, oh, this is a nice place. People say, oh, this is a great place, but people go there, and then after a while, it might be cool for a while, and then you're like, oh, I don't like it, I want to go somewhere else, I'm bored of this place. So that's constantly how we go along, right? It's not like you find some perfect place and then everyone's completely happy there. It doesn't work like that. So as long as you stay in samsara, you have to be best mates with suffering. Okay. So then we look at the truth of the origin, which is also said to be like the cause, right? The cause of this suffering. So go through the definition here within the aspect of pervasive affliction and being thoroughly distinguished and qualified by the four: cause, origin, force of reproduction, and condition.
딱보는 뭐지? 내가 강한시냐 다. 야고 묘몬 초게 초 이모 강한시가. 아니 콜레 제조라고 디 유군주라지 제 신참도나 그거 군주되면 잘 빼나. 아, 다만 저기 먼저 저기 마편바지 얘기 내가 묘몬 여러와. 어떤 상황마다 군주되면 말이스. 근데 가래라나 그거는 묘몬주지 되면에 그 묘몬 초게 유 차리지 레스로. 다 데라 가르세 윤나바이데 아니 란데 동에 기타와 이메시다 이와 아나도 동에 망고지 연대야 돼 싸와데 이네 예토데 되면 된지 아마 겨울라니들 토데요라
right
코레 제자 란데 동에 기타와 군중대 바데 동에 제야기 규 싸워드랬다 윤나바이데 동에 기타와 해서다
the later 냐모
레다 뇨모디 추젠시
right
레다 뇨모디 군중대 바시 타고 군중대 바이 줌젤라 아니 제시디 군전 유무제 대바 임바디체 제주다 당고 시간에 유나버레스 제주 당고
right
유나버 임베 제주 가래서나 란데 동에게 자와 임베시스 란데 동에게 자와
okay okay so then anything that is in the aspect of delusion and has these four characteristics is said to be the truth of the origin. So karma and delusion fit into this category because they are said to be... Why do they fit into this category? Because they're the original source of all of our difficulties, problems and sufferings. So, whatever we experience now, difficulties and problems and suffering, originally come from a cause we've created in a previous life, right? Or previously. So when you dig down to the root of what is the cause of all the suffering, it's the root of it comes down to this karma and delusion. So that's why it's said to be in the aspect of the truth of, or the cause or the truth of the origin of suffering.
자네 이제 군중으로 가다 군중은 남바인데
Right.
다 동해 군 총았으나 이제 랑 저거 동해 양내 기억이요. 양내 동해 직상 기억 샤마셔지. 항상 양내 기억도. 양내 동해 망고요라다. 양내 또 드링 동해 용고도 산이 동해 용고도 나 동해도 더해미도. 근데 그 싸워디 내 지고 그왜 이네마 과셔로 그마 차시로 동작 거셔요. 제가 내가 유모디 그 동해 양내 게 고마방사도 먼저 동해 게 동해 집 파도스나 야 동해 집게 야 동해 집게서 동해 집 동해 야네 개원에서 동해 군지 관계 총을해서나 아니 그 총을해서 내가 요모들 되네 동해 군 총을 해서 제가 군중세가 그래서
Right. So the reason it's kunjung means like all producing, right? Or kunjung, yeah, like pervasively producing. So this meaning here is that so it's translated as origin, but that's for more literal meaning, and it's kunjung because the result of this karma and delusion is suffering, but it's not like a one-off thing, right? It's a continuous cycle of suffering, difficulties, problems, again and again and again, right? So, you have difficulties today, but that's not it. It's not like tomorrow you're going to have a holiday from all problems. Again, you'll have difficulties tomorrow, and it goes like this. And it doesn't actually run out until you abandon this cause, which is the karma and delusion, until you go beyond that. Then you continuously experience these difficulties and problems again and again, like on repeat. So that's why it's like the kunjung, and that's the pervasive aspect of it, is that it's a continually happening thing, not just a one-off situation.
왠지는 배샤 옷으로 배. 매도 루트제라 자와 때마다는 로다르시 매도 지도. 와. 다다로 매도 디제도 매도 배 파조스나나 그 자와 루트 때문에 가든나는 유나네 그 수견이야. 그 매도 지도. 야 달로 매도 하드나야 로지마 매도 지고 매도 양내 지도.
Right.
그 자와디 매 여러 디나시 먼저 그 동해 그 자와디 여행자 안으로 동해 양내 지고 군주가
Right. So we can take the example of certain flowers or plants, right? Now this is an example of how it is. You might have some certain plants in your garden, and if you just cut the stem off but leave the root, then so the plant won't be there, right? It'll and that's like a one aspect of suffering, right? But if you don't remove the root, leave the root there, then it's going to grow again, and you can cut it and it'll grow again, and you can cut it, and it will continue to reproduce until you actually, once you pull the roots out, then it can't produce anymore. But as long as you don't do that, it will continue to grow again and again and again. So this is the example. That's these delusions that then produce the suffering. But until you remove the roots of these delusions, you're constantly going to be producing suffering again and again, and constantly having to experience suffering until you actually deal with the roots of that suffering. Right. Right, okay. So we get on to this rub kit, which is production, but it has this, I use the word forcefully produced. It just says you've got to understand, it produces it very strongly. It's not just like a mild production. It's really strongly, something that's produced very forcefully or very strongly. Okay, so therefore the sufferings are produced very strongly, right? Very forcefully. It's not just kind of a mild irritation now and again. It's actually like this really forceful kind of production of suffering. Right. So then we get to this condition which is said to be chicken. This is the fourth one. So it's basically like a supportive conditions. Like the supportive conditions, the secondary conditions that allow something to be produced. So this completes the truth of suffering and the origin of suffering. So anything that is within samsara can be categorized as either the cause or the result of that cause. So therefore, either something's the cause for the suffering or the actual suffering itself. So therefore, all samsaric phenomena can be categorized within these first two truths. Okay. So then we get into the last two, which is the truth of the path and the truth of cessation. So the truth of cessation and then the truth of the path. So this is in the aspect or the direction of Namjang, which I've put here as complete purity, but more literally means complete abandonment. So what have you abandoned? You've abandoned the karma and the cause for that, the delusions. So having abandoned this delusions and the karma, then resultantly you abandon all suffering. This is suffering cannot manifest. And then you experience, that's the path, and then having followed that path, you experience the result, which is the truth of cessation. So it has that's the aspect that these two are within, or what can be called the base. So that's the base, and then the characteristics are the four attributes, it's said here. So the four attributes are for the truth of cessation, peace, excellence, and renunciation or definite emergence.
다들 진짜는 년부터 들어와. 년부터 동에
Okay.
댄스에 자와져와 고된시. 년부 나 년부 남대도 운용선도에 남대도에 아니 너무 군중된 거 빵거죠. 봐. 이제 빵거들이야 다 제시지. 내가 제주 아니 고거래서 고거. 다 걸로 고거시 제주 당고대 고거 남아 있는 인생에서는 동해 방배 채워야 미쳤다. 고거에 있는 동해 나다면서 동해 대발라서 하대. 어딘데 바 방배게 아니 채워지 인상 걸어야다 고거스라고 그랬어.
Okay. So this path, this truth of the path, is the antidote. It's said to be the antidote to the delusions, and that's why it's referred to as the path. So once you abandon this delusions, karma delusions, which is the truth of, that's the origin, truth of the origin, which is the origin for all the suffering, right? Once you abandon that, you attain the cessation, the state of cessation, which is a state beyond all suffering. And why is it said to be that? Because you've abandoned the suffering and the cause for suffering. So therefore, there's no possibility to experience any suffering.
어디 제시제. 다 제주 당고대 보고 시작해봐. 동해범에 잡았지. 다 제주녀와 시베 남아 있디.
Okay.
녀모범에 잡아 있는 시에서 녀모. 와 당도 녀모 저 되자 시당 컨트롤인데 여러. 아니 이제 되자다 만나도 줄라 되자다 컨트롤. 미 칸도 하나도 세워하고다. 미 차도 사고도 상바 툭 조절해라. 미 차도 사고이나 잘해서 사고이나. 항상 툭도 툭는 쉬워요 말아. 타도 대해서 용어에는 밑에 삼아 쉬워요. 용어 탐지에 되자시다 보는 게 때문에 찾아 봐는 안 쓰면 쉬워요. 아주 쌤게 쉬워더니 이 상만 용어 봐봐는 안 쉬워요. 찾아. 그거는 가서 쉬워나 봐요. 그래서 찾아.
Okay, so then the second aspect is the aspect of peace, right? Peace. Or pacification is another translation. So this comes about through the abandonment of delusions, right? Now, this is illustrated if we take the example, one of the primary delusions is this mind of jealousy. Now, somebody who's always jealous, then they get angry very easily, they get, their mind is constantly turmoiled. When they're in the state of jealousy or anger, then there's no chance for peace, right? This is the nature of the mind of jealousy and the nature of the mind of anger, that it disturbs the peace of the mind. However, when you remove that and the other delusions, then the mind is naturally at peace. It's not something that you have to create separate. Once you remove the delusions, the mind naturally comes to be in a peaceful state. So this is the second aspect, or attribute, of peace.
Right. 차는 버스니 펜딩 오디에 타고서 차는 버렸다. 차는 가서는 따라와서 배는 가라도 단다 차도로 잘라서 찍리도 생생히 서셔도 심. 안 되잖아요. 혼도매요. 근데 일단 상법 쉬워요. 단데 쉬워되다 고도 서로 하나서 미직래야 dindajila lajade komu tijigena 10,000 week yena 다는 디스탄알아제 배샤 약외였으니 그런 팀제 네 자질을 내가 깔아가고 지금 말하고 아니 가리냐고도 강고에 문제 되잖아요. 근데 지금 내나시 여자시당 컨트롤 유모도서 파방사는 배 자는 거 쓰면야 내가 자는 거 대화디 교회요.
So the next one is excellence, right? Now, excellence is said to be excellent because it's this freedom from all mental agitation, right, or strife. So that now we constantly are under various kind of different types of agitation. Like we're always a little bit worried about things, and we have different strives in our life. But once you abandon the delusions, and then your mind naturally comes to a state of deep peace and like a satisfaction. So I guess use an example. If you we always worry about money and not having enough and whatnot. But if you were paid $10,000 a week, then for most people, I think that would be enough, and they'd just be satisfied. They go, okay, that's cool. I'm cool. I can do whatever I want. If I want to buy something, I can buy it. I can go where I want. I can travel where I want. Basically, from the money perspective, we don't have any. We're totally satisfied with the amount of money we have, and we can do whatever we want with that money. It should be enough, right? So it's that kind of thing. When you completely abandon these delusions, your mind reaches that state of satisfaction, like it's everything's cool, basically. Right. Right, so he thinks maybe this is not the perfect example because he's asking the question, well, does money really make you happy, right? So he's not, don't get it wrong, he's not actually trying to tell you that if you had 10 grand a week, everything would be totally all right. Right. So, oh, okay. Right. So yeah, but the reality of the situation is, you think now if I had 10 grand a week, it'd be cool, but when you get 10 grand a week, you probably want 20, right? Because that's your attachment will just increase. If you get more money, often it just leads to more and more attachment and more wanting.
And Polonsha Hambashel long, Bella. Mamma, Polonsha, Mok the away was Polonsha, somebody shoot Simbola, and Mugiji, Jimbaneji.
Right. No,
Bishop Lawarana.
Right.
And the bank of Roman Hotel, and the bank customers had it.
Right, okay. Right. So sometimes it's actually a problem because if like say you borrow a lot of money from the bank, you've got a lot of money in your hand, but in reality you're indebted to the bank, and you can actually this can be a problem. Like you got a big mortgage, it can be a source of stress and problems, and you actually can become kind of like the bank's servant in a way.
That's it. 아니 다 예종의 남바 예월중의 남바 이게 라미도에 타봐 어다 디베고지 된 거라 다 동해 람데 기도 동해의 직 대타나 동해 양자 연구 말이죠 뒤에는 동해 대대로 그 양자 추 아니 동해의 양자 추 레벨에 요 맞다
So now we get onto the aspect of the normal translation is renunciation, but the real meaning is definite emergence. And why it's said to be that is because once you attain the state of cessation, that's it. Like suffering can never return again. You can, like, once you have emerged from samsara, then you can never go back, right? Once you finally emerge, you can't go back. There's no return of suffering. Once you completely abandon the delusions, then there is no suffering. It can't come back again.
다디 고딩기 디시로
Right.
다디네 람데 다디 고딩세데 제가 그 퍼지 람데기도 퍼지 람데 람고베도 아니 동네 제가 디고요 레스타
Right. So it's now we get to the truth of the path. So it's basically saying that the truth of the path is called that because through practicing this path, through engaging in this path, you attain the state of cessation or liberation. So you attain the truth of cessation through the practice of the path. So it's kind of, in a way, it's the truth of cessation is the result of the truth of the path.
다디 세월에 아니 한데 남자처럼 대박 하나씩 나서 다디 탑이 차리 거기 고긴 톱지 상 야면 톱지 전에 고긴 톱지 제 번째 가르쳐서는 아니 동네 대보다 본주 대보파 매웠으니 세계로와 타도 최제로 이제 보조 이제 강산담에 무슨도 또 왜이시 강산담에 무슨도 또 걸어 남의 무슨도 또 이시 대셔 다 내가 아니 제주 당고 남자 주의 때문에 강시 있어야 돼 제시디 참으로 했어
So this is we're looking again at this within the aspect of the complete abandonment. So this through this path you attain, through practicing that, you attain the cessation. So you attain the third noble truth, and you abandon the first two, the truth of suffering and the cause of that suffering. Now, how is this done? Well, primarily this is done through the realization of selflessness. So when one directly realizes selflessness, then one has abandoned all the suffering and attained this result of liberation or cessation.
다디 강산담 무슨 데에 이시들라 아니 제시 당고도 상으로 다 남지 남바 인데서야데 아니 타워트가 집에 남지 리스네 위치 타워트에 남지 리스네 제 베진디 타워트에 남사데 전남전에 야초로 와 제시 제주 당고데 다 전남전으로 타워트에 남데 제가 네 상리요 이내에 제주 상을 시대 상통으로 제주로 제시디 가서 담은 것도 왜디 관상 담은 것도 왜 남주해봐 가서 담은 것도 하고서
예
어디 군 남자들이 때문에 강시 있어요 제시디
right
아디가 제주 남 아니 리버 좋아
right
미주시여라
right
남 이베 준대 가르스나 타워 주제 남 이베 치서야 돼 준대로 남 이데 타워 주제 이베 치서
right
어디 당고대
okay any dilemma you read
뒤에 초람조람을 해야 돼 남자들이다
okay so this wisdom that directly recognizes selflessness, right? That's the result. That's what is used to attain the liberation. And then the first of the four aspects of the truth of cessation is the path. So this path contains the techniques, the means to develop that wisdom and attain the state of liberation, right? And that within this is contained the five paths: the path of accumulation, preparation, seeing, meditation, and no more learning.
다 이제 남을 리바 나가 이제 묘모지 뭐냐지 묘모지 뭐냐 이메시 다디 설람절람 요마 뭐냐세 내가 뭐스페 묘모가 너트미에 치고 뭐스 파비자자디
Okay.
디 설람절람 뭐스 치도고야 말 그 돈이 무슨 도고야 말와 어디에 금전에 돈이 무슨 도 매이다 아니 단지라 뭐스 너트고야 말 묘모라 뭐스 너트고야 말 제단다 리버서 차게야 말 람데데라 리버차로 설람다 저는 리버야 말다 묘모지 뭐냐 말이다
Okay, so this next one, awareness, this rikpa, or kind of like clarity intelligence, is said to be the direct antidote to delusions, right? So the path itself is, you can say, through practicing the path will remove the delusions, but it's not a direct antidote within itself. It's this rikpa that directly combats, is the direct antidote or directly eradicates the delusions. So that's the second aspect of the truth of the path.
다 주변 나가셔야지 신비내로 치지 말라고 왔다 무슨 데 좋아해요 뒤에 상담하래 신비내로
Okay.
신비내로 신비 동반이에요 와 신비 동반이 무슨 데 도고요 인자 주변 나가래 세다 설람 전원데 신비내로 무슨 데 도고 말와 뒤에 상담하래
Okay. And again, we have the achievement. And what is the achievement? The achievement is directly understanding the nature of the mind, which is emptiness. So directly understanding the nature of the mind is the achievement that's achieved through this path, right? But again, the path is not the achievement itself. So there's the five paths are not said to be the achievement itself. This achievement is the actual understanding of the nature of the mind.
다 니월 짐베 타고 이제 동네 댄스 시기 나는 거지. 니월 짐바.
Okay.
다 동네 댄스 세워. 제가 아니 동네 댄스 세워디 처럼 저런 거 시도고요. 통남네 돈이 무슨 뜻도 안 메시 동네 댄스 세워디 시도고요 말이야.
Okay.
동네 땐데 세워서 동네 파 찍가서는 라이크는 영화면 됐어. 땐데 세워서 들어. 어디?
Okay, so then we have definite freedom, right? And definite freedom is the complete clearing away or eradication of all the delusions all the suffering and delusions from their source in a way that they can never come back, right? And again, the five paths means to do that, but they don't. It's not actually directly doing them themselves. So this definite freedom is defined as the complete clearing away or eradication of all the delusions.
다 되게 생고요래 먼저 로슈주로 생거라 아 동네된 발에 제주시 군주된 발에 제주시 고된라시 남된라시 십시주로 로서 어디 그 덴바시디 제주들이 안데 저랑 제메 되는 로슈주로 되는
Right. So now we get on to the what's the translated is here. So if we go back a page, we've got the 16 wrong views related to the Four Noble Truths. Okay. Now, as we've said here, each of the Four Noble Truths has the 4 aspects to each one. And that makes a total of 16 aspects for the Four Noble Truths. Now, the corresponding wrong views relating to those are these 16 wrong views, which we're going to look at now.
당고요는 그 디테 생고래 배나 한다 로 다다다 지 고된세 남된세 지셔라 그래도 단단 말아서 말아서 그 통요야 말아서 말아서 탐나 먼저 거와들라 내 말에 도리야
Right.
다나디 신이 상황이면 이 영화 컨텐츠 하고 그래요 맞아 고된요 컨텐츠 하고 그래 먼저
Right.
이 디스트릭에 시에고요 고된 남들 좀 하고 시에 그런 생각 나한테 전에 영화 매겨지 룸도 이제 네 룸도 말해 네 뭐였지 라디오 당기도
Right.
네 룸 말했어
Okay.
민방법적인 출루라야 돼야 즉 독서서 룸무서 지게를 남배 쳐지 이제 말했어
Right.
뭐였지 당 뭐였지 라디오 그랬어
Right.
뭐였지 라마주나나 유샤랬어
Okay, so first before we get into that, just wants to talk a little bit more about these Four Noble Truths, right? The cessation path, etc., like that. Now, especially for the last two, these two, we haven't realized, we haven't attained this state of cessation and we haven't understood the path, right? But when we hear about it, we've been talking about it a lot, but you shouldn't regard it as some sort of like story, right? It's not like a nice story, that to put children to sleep at night or something like that. It's when it comes to the Buddha Dharma, everything is about explaining the way things exist. So these Four Noble Truths is an explanation of that. This is how we understand the way things exist. It's not a story.
배나
Right.
말아서 답해지 말아서 참을로 잘했어 개념이었어 잘했어게 가시 문요 먹고 열어서 잘했어 말아서 참아 다디 양념도 열어서 잘했어 제일 차도 봐 빵이나 차도데 예민상 라운드어도나시 미에데워 버레 상도 디지버게 차도 맞아도 그랬어
Right. Okay.
네 시엠백이 내기 차도 가는 말로 차도 때문에 동일이 요 말했어
Okay.
상만줄라 람딘 지듬버직나 고된 지듬버직 단다 영화 열었어 진이 상황이나 고다우지 열었어 단다 만줄이 영화 열었어 진이 상황이 람로쇼로 용으로 와
Right.
근데 람딘도 어디 만들 차도 지주면도 와 차도게 삼범만 지워 람만 지워 미만 지워서도 미 신다 랑나 대어 보는 미 신다 거래 아주 정말 찍거래 상당한 차도 용으로 그랬어 차도 용으로 줘야지 시베 람덴다 그래 뭐 신이에 셔러로 하셔 대대네 시스 차도 내용 네 차도 지주면 아무 찍거래 그다 차도 지금에라나 아니 차도를 때문에 동해디 요마 차도를 때문에 동해디 가래 차도 때문에 동해 가고 가고디 먼저 줄 리고 될래야 아니 거기에 지트 거지 근데 망고야 그러면 그 디데 상담은 먼저 거기에 좀 도래서
Okay. So to give an example, right? A more practical example. If we take one delusion, for example, let's say we take the mind of jealousy here. Now, we all from time to time get caught up in this mind of jealousy, right? And get wound up in that situation. But if we really understand it, right? So what it is, then we'd come to see that no happiness comes from this mind of, nothing good comes from this mind of jealousy, basically. It disturbs our minds, causes unhappiness. And if we were to abandon that, then that suffering, that difficulties, the jealousy, wouldn't be able to arise. If we didn't have just jealousy in our minds, then all the difficulties, problems, sufferings associated with the mind of jealousy would not be able to manifest either. So that's the cause of jealousy and the suffering of jealousy, right? So that would be the example of the first two noble truths relating to this emotion of jealousy. Then if we look at the path, once we understand that jealousy is not happiness, right? Once we've understood that, then we'll engage in the means to eradicate that mind of jealousy, to prevent it from arising. So whatever we needed to do, analyze, check, and gain understanding, that would be like engaging in the path. And then once we've actually abandoned the mind of jealousy, so it doesn't even arise. So as soon as we see it tend to arise, we've completely abandoned it. And then we reach the state of happiness or freedom from that jealousy, and that would be like the truth of cessation. So it has this practical application within our daily lives. So this jealousy here, it fits the definition of these Four Noble Truths if you look at it in that way.
하셔도 제가 아니 녀러도 와 아니 파드직 파이팅 제 아니 제가 동해도 와 제 동해도 말이야.
Right.
다 미지기 따져랑 밀어 하셔 지겨요 말이야지 이제 두고 시겨요 말이야 라위나 이야 아 드링네 밀어 지도 시기면서 남과들이 다 지도 시기면 나와라 남과만 지도 시기면서 와라 아 드링네가 지도 시기면서 라디디 아니 데 만도 람딩 소지 다 미지 계절 담을 남유로 자면 수수 세미나에 책도 대용도 나가네 수수 시기면서 가대비나 아니 책도를 때문에 동해대 연구 말해 제가 책도를 때문에 동해 매매 잡아디 책도 대회 잡아디 거기서 그래 대수술이야 얘네 연대들이 뭐야 도체는 먼저 나디 다 직주인 잡아 책도 마디에도 좀 말. 담야디 내가 대두고요. 도체는 단다 동반이야 내가 대두고요. 동반이기도 와. 내가 대리고. 다 그지도 왔어.
Okay. So now if we take another example, we take the example of harsh speech, harsh words, like yelling and screaming at people, nasty speech, basically. So this harsh speech itself can be seen as like the origin, the source of difficulties and problems, because we know that if we talk to people in a harsh way, it compounds out, leads to all sorts of problems. They get upset, they yell back, can escalate into some very difficult situations. So then we understand that this leads to suffering. So then we make this idea and make this sort of pledge, right, or commitment. So today I'm not going to engage in harsh speech. I'm not going to say anything harsh to anybody. And this pledge, this commitment can be seen as the truth of the path, right? And then when we actually engage in that, so let's say you start to get angry in your mind and these thoughts to say something to somebody else arises, but you actually cut it, you stop it. So the harsh speech never actually occurs. And therefore, you don't have all the difficulties, problems that would occur if you did say harsh speech and these things to this person. So in a way, this is the cessation. This is the truth of cessation for that aspect of harsh speech. So this commitment, so we've made this commitment and then follow that through with not engaging in harsh speech is an example of these Four Noble Truths.
대가 신이상하다 말인데 제좀 봐줘라. 나머지 열 당고 대정안도 하고 그래서 매직도 하고는 그래서 수수 매직을 거나야 samdandan jigdane samdandan dela du dunge kare samdandan dela du dunge mewe samdan dedo so setawina ani mane ge ani deshi ki langdo sa de dusre yamba de bezire namba sanje desh de namba sanje ge ma de don ne da namba sanje domshi dile go yorwa
So there's many examples like this, but what we're trying to illustrate here is that these aren't just like definitions, right? They're not just meant to be understood as a definition or an intellectual exercise and then you go off and say, oh, that's cool, and you leave it alone, right? The point is it has actual very practical applications in our lives, right? If we actually look at the situation, like use this understanding to say, oh, is this the way things actually exist? Is the way things work? And we do that and we actually bring it into understanding, it can actually have a very positive effect on our mind, a very practical explanation. So this Four Noble Truths is the basic understanding that one needs. It's the first thing Buddha taught, so it's the basis for all of the Dharma. It's the basic understanding that one needs. Right. Right. So, these are the Four Noble Truths, through being mistaken in our understanding of the Four Noble Truths. This leads to a lot of difficulties, problems, and sufferings through not understanding them clearly, right? And how are we to understand? Well, if we look at these 16 aspects of the Four Noble Truths, this is the reality of the way things exist. This is the way things truly exist. But we aren't in tune with that. We don't have that understanding. We actually have these opposite views, these 16 opposing views. And that's why we encounter difficulties, problems, and sufferings. Okay.